Hello and welcome to another episode of Exploring Entrepreneurship with myself, Manish Joshi, Chief Executive of Strathclyde Students' Union. Today we're also joined by my colleague Eleanor McKitt.
Hi.
Who's part of Strathclyde Inspire and works in close partnership with the Students' Union. Eleanor will be offering up some questions to our guests from our listeners here and from our followers on social media, so welcome.
Thank you.
This episode is going to be a little different in that we will still be exploring entrepreneurship with a wonderful Strathclyde Inspire supported business, but we'll be focusing our discussion on the highs and lows of being an entrepreneur and the effects that it has on your mental health and well-being. Our guest today is a wonderful Melanie Blane, who studied history and business management at the University of Strathclyde and graduated in 2010. In 2016, Melanie created and founded a cruelty-free, eco-friendly and fully vegan skincare company, White Rabbit Skincare. Mm-hmm. Keen to become the leading plastic-free skincare brand globally, Melanie is conscious of making sure that it's not just about profits, but about societal and economic impact. Already, she's managed to ensure that 99% of the company's beauty products are plastic-free, and the boxes that its products are packaged in are 100% recycled and printed with plant-based ink. The company even have 100% recycled paper packaging tape printed with plant-based ink. So all very impressive.
Yeah.
Welcome, Melanie, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's so exciting.
No, it's great to have you with us. And I feel like I should know more about skincare products, but I really don't. So I'm really looking forward to getting educated, I think, in this.
Hopefully I can do it, yeah.
Thank you very much. So just to start, tell us a bit about yourself and how you ended up becoming such a successful and innovative entrepreneur.
Well, I still find it quite surreal, even like being here today, but it just shows you that everything happens for a reason, because when I came to Strathclyde, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason, I think I was one of the few, if not first, people who combined history with like marketing and business studies, like it never been done before. But I decided to do history because I was interested in it, and I thought I might as well do that. But it was actually whilst I was at university, and you know the kind of stresses and that comes along with that I was diagnosed with the skin condition psoriasis.
Right. Okay.
So I had went to the doctor, and you know I was told that there wasn't a cure for psoriasis, so it's all about managing the symptoms, and it tends to be because it's a autoimmune condition. Yeah. It's related to stress, but it's also hereditary. But then I was given the steroid creams, but I was told only use them for a couple of weeks and sent on my way basically. And me being very into like research and that kind of thing, I was like why is that? Like why can't I use steroid creams long term? And I then discovered that because skin is your body's largest organ and it absorbs a huge amount of what you put onto it directly into your bloodstream, there is a debate about how much is absorbed into your bloodstream. So I can't really specify figures there, but that was a kind of wake up call to me. So I started thinking, if it's all about managing the symptoms rather than looking for a cure, I personally would rather use products that I know what goes into them, how they're made, so on and so forth. And my mum had bought me a make your own skincare book, essentially. And I literally started again. I had no intention of, it's not like I woke up one day and thought I'm gonna start a skincare business, I'm gonna become an entrepreneur and so on. It just sort of happened. So I was literally in, I wish I had a photo I could show you, but I was in my tiny little kitchen, probably like corner of this room. It was the size of a wee galley kitchen making products, but it was just for myself. Again, I had no intention to, kind of go out and expand, but then the snowball effect, like friends and family started taking an interest in it, and then I started sort of putting feelers out, and I think again it was by chance. I'd got an email from Inspire, potentially about, I can't remember, again it was 2000, we're talking like early 2000s here, that makes me feel so old.
So you're still a student at this point?
No, I had graduated by this point.
Okay.
But I've subscribed to the newsletters and so on and so forth. And I think something come up. So at the time, it was called the Rising Stars programme. Yeah. So I was very fortunate that I joined that. And it was a very, very small cohort, and it was brilliant. And we had access to like various support facilities and things. And through that, it's sort of organically, no pun intended, well, pun intended, because most of my products are organic, but it was literally like a snowball effect. So I actually, through Inspire, I got put in contact with two people who are now my sort of unofficial mentors. They're incredible. Like they, because at the moment in the business, it's essentially just me and my mum, who we'll talk about later. It can be a very lonely, a lonely place to be. So my mentors that, as I say, I found through Inspire, we tend to have a sort of loosely called board meeting every month. So basically it's like a catch-up call, and it just gives me like accountability, it gives me support, it gives me, because sometimes it can be really difficult to know, and you can't see the wood for the trees. Like sometimes sometimes when you talk through with someone, it then becomes obvious, but at the time, whether it's to do with, you know, should I go for this opportunity, should I go for this funding, all the shoulds. It's really good to have those kind of sounding boards to speak to.
I think that's just helpful in life generally, isn't it?
Yeah,
like having good coaches, mentors, or just somebody who's a wee bit removed from your situation that you can just go and say, am I getting this right?
Yeah.
A sense check or get some insight or wisdom. So I think it's great that you've had that for quite a number of years now as well, and it's been the same people. Yeah.
So I keep losing track of time, especially with everything that happened with COVID and everything. But we've always kept in touch. Like I email Ellie every now and then, and quite a few of my friends actually I met through the Inspire program, so that's really good.
I think the Rising Star program that you talk about, it still exists. It's just renamed essentially. So it's the Inspire Accelerator program. So it's still same thing. You know, you have to be accepted onto it. You have to be at a certain stage in your business to be able to apply for it. But there's still funding. So there's 5k funding available for people now as part of the start of that journey. And we've learned from your experiences, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, however many years that was, and added to that as well. So hopefully that's kind of adding value to the next generation of Inspire.
And I found that key because with a lot of traditional, business support groups that you can get, I found there was a massive gap between when you're a startup, and then also it tends to go from startup to like established business. There's nothing really for people who are in the middle, and I considered myself to be in the middle. So obviously I started all those years ago, and that excluded me. A lot of like grant funding or other funding is actually like date limited. So I see even now, like, so I officially launched Companies House in 2016 or whenever it was. I still think of myself like 6 years later as a startup, because I feel like there's so much more that I want to do and but I can't apply for certain things because of that date.
Yeah, there's normally kind of like a 5-year
window
cut-off point or 2-year cut-off point.
Yeah, and then as I say, like for a lot of like the kind of bigger organisations that are maybe run through like local councils and things, like they want you to be having X amount of turnover, X amount of, and I know this is from a sort of practical point of view, there's got to be these bullet points that you have got to hit, but at the same time it's good to have other options such as Inspire to help. So that's really good.
And what made you take the jump from 2010 you graduated? What made you take the jump to set up your own company? And I guess what did you do in between?
Well, I always say, so I mentioned this to Ellie the other day, but I am very big on, like the law of attraction and manifestation in the universe. And I genuinely think it was the universe giving me a shove. So for the longest time when I started up with Rabbit Skincare, I was still working full time. Then I reduced my hours down to part time, and then the cutting point as such was I actually got let go from my job just before Christmas. And my initial panic and thought was, oh my goodness, I need to find like other work. I need to find another job. And everyone around me was like, Melanie, why don't you just do the obvious thing and work on White Rabbit Skincare? So that's essentially what I did. I just sort of dived straight in, and because I always used to be very much about waiting for the right time. So I always used to think I need to wait until I'm selling X amount of products, until I'm earning this amount, so on and so forth. But I now know there is no such thing as the right time, and done is better than perfect. So you've just got to do it.
That's good advice. And I think there's something in there about setting your intention, isn't there? So actually that intentionality. and what is the definition of success in that moment as well, actually, because I'm sure for you at that point you're like, well, I can sustain myself, I can keep the lights on, I can do X, Y, and Z, and it's about steps and moments in time. I think sometimes when you've got a business, it's not always going to be like this upward trajectory where it's like growth after growth. I think sometimes there's bumps in the road, and but as you say, it's like you don't make perfect enemy of good. You just kind of say, well, this is the moment I'm in, I have to kind of get on with it. So I think that's encouraging, hopefully, for people too.
I think the classic kind of, I mean, it's a bit cliche maybe to say, but all entrepreneurs fail at some point. You know, so it's about managing that failure and that feeling of failure and being resilient enough to go, right, okay, that didn't work, but I've done this, so I can do X, Y, and Z, and kind of move on from it and learn from that as well. So,
and you made a really good point then when you mentioned success, because for so long, again, I was very fixated on what I thought the correct definition of success was. I used to think success would be it's that whole thing of as well of thinking I will be happy when, or I will think I'm successful when I get to XYZ. I'm employing X amount of people, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And again, it's something that I'm sort of working on mindset wise, but success to me now is, I actually see when I'm sitting here now and I'm looking and I'm thinking I am successful because I can design my day however I want to. I can, if I am maybe having a day where I don't know, maybe like mental health wise or whatever, I'm feeling it's a bit of a tough day for me. If I want to remove myself from the situation, if I want to go and work in a coffee shop and get my favourite coffee, that to me is success. Because see, if you think about it, a lot of people don't have those opportunities. A lot of people don't have that ability to do that. Totally. So it's, to me, every day it's all a culmination of like small wins and small successes, rather than trying to do the whole, as I say, I'll be happy when. So yeah.
No, I think again that is really good advice, because I do think sometimes entrepreneurship is tied up with people thinking you've got to be the next Jeff Bezos or something like that, or Richard Branson or something like that. And actually you look at their stories and all that, and they're not overnight successes, and they're totally different types of businesses. But in this country, the majority of business owners are small, medium-sized enterprises. They're SMEs, and they're people like yourself who I think have taken a risk. I think there's no doubt about it, right? It's easier to come in and get the paycheck and do the 9 to 5 and all that stuff, but you have things like freedom and autonomy and hopefully authenticity, because you can look yourself in the mirror and go, well, I'm doing something I'm passionate about. And I think those are important things, especially I think for students who are probably starting out maybe on that journey right now, or are coming to uni after 2 years of COVID, not really knowing what they're doing, and that's okay. I think that's totally fine, because it's a great place to try and experiment and prototype and try new things out, and get to meet people that you might work with and partner with and things like that. And I think one of the nice things is that you're still in touch with Ellie. Like, here we are, like 6 years
She's not getting rid of me.
So, Strathclyde Inspire is perhaps a new face of something that has already been in existence for a long time, and I think it's taken it in a different direction. But what was the experience like for you in working with Ellie and the team when you were here and over the years? And I guess what advice would you give somebody who's maybe at a similar position that you were when you were a student?
Well, first and foremost, I remember every time I would come into the hub, like because I used to try and so I'm from Kilmarnock, so I used to like travel, and I would try to come into the hub like at least like once a week, because as I say, having that different place to work can often make a difference in how you're getting on. And I remember I used to come in all the time, and it used to feel really like welcoming and not to sound cheesy, but comforting as well, because sometimes I'm very introverted, and sometimes it can be quite overwhelming to go in to somewhere. Like I'll be honest, sometimes I did find the student experience in terms of, when you would go into like the big lecture halls, and you would go into like your like little groups and stuff, and having to talk to people that you didn't really know and things, it could be quite intimidating. So it was nice to have that place to go. I could get my head down, I could work. If there was anything I wasn't sure about, or if I had a thought of, I wonder if someone knows this person, like it. 9 times out of 10, like, you would know someone that you could put me in touch with. So as I mentioned earlier, my 2 mentors, one of them, Lorraine, so she's from up here, but she lives down in London, but she's like a marketing whiz, and it was through Inspire that I got put in touch with her. And I actually now consider her my friend as well. Like, she's, because my sister lives in London. This is what I mean about growing from tangents, but my sister lives in London, so whenever I've been in London, I go and meet up with Lorraine and stuff, and it's just, it's lovely. It's not been overly formal or stiff, or, you know, I mean, like, overly businessy, if that makes sense. Like,
almost like kind of creating your own tribe.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. It's the kind of tribe aspect.
You don't necessarily feel like
good.
you're in a structured program, because I guess the program gets tailored to where you're at with your business, and moves and flexes with you to a degree, right? Because there's some people who were rising stars and maybe have not chosen to continue with their business, and there's other people who've obviously gone on to significant success and have big teams now and are doing all kinds of stuff. And I think no two businesses are the same.
No, exactly. And I think that's the main thing with Inspire as a whole. It's about where you're at in your entrepreneurial journey. And what you need at that point. So even now, you might be going, well, actually, I'm looking to expand my team. I'm looking to find maybe it's student internships, or, you know, I'm using you as an example, but, you know, there's other people in that kind of stage as well. And we can put people in touch with, you know, Students' Union, have great connections, obviously, with the students and all different societies. And, you know, we've obviously got some investment funds. I think we're fourth most active investor in Glasgow at the moment. So, you know, there's opportunities for businesses as they grow, and that might be in a year's time, that might be in 5 years' time. You know, it's not time limited. I think that's the main thing, is that you're always welcome back as well. You know, because I think a lot of universities, you know, they might put a time limit on it, just based on resources, and, you know, totally understandable. But you know, the University Strathclyde has definitely invested a lot recently in this particular area, and that is one of the benefits of being a Strathclyder, essentially, is you could graduate 10-15 years down the line and go, oh, I've got a business idea, I need some support, don't know where to go. If we're still here, we're still standing, we're here, we can support you. So.
And I guess, you know, you mentioned that the hub being a place of comfort, and, you know, it's had a bit of a zhuzh up. I don't know if you've been over, but
no, I haven't seen it yet.
You need to go have a look, because I tell you what, it's giving you a warmer embrace and a warmer hug now, because it looks great. And I guess for anyone that's listening, like, go and check out the Inspire Hub, level 6 of the Graham Hills building. You'll get a warm welcome, but also just a chance to check out a space which is much more, I think, suited for what entrepreneurs and students are looking for at the moment. There's, you know, good meeting rooms, good breakout spaces, nice communal space.
Good.
Lovely plants.
Living plants. Yeah.
Nice clean air from the plants.
Absolutely.
So I do kind of want to just touch on, obviously, we've had a couple of listeners get in touch, and we've got entrepreneurs in our pipeline at the moment that have a few questions for you. So I'll just run through them. So you kind of touched upon it a little bit, being a solo entrepreneur, kind of a bit isolating sometimes, and this particular entrepreneur has mentioned that they do feel like that sometimes. So is there anything that you do to kind of combat that isolation? Obviously, you mentioned that you've built relationships with mentors and things like that, but is there anything else that you do, either personally or with other organisations, that has made it feel less lonely?
Well, I would say, obviously in the context of this podcast, but reaching out to organisations like Inspire. So to literally take yourself out of, especially if you are working at home, or you know, you're literally, and I know we've all experienced that over the last couple of years, but building a network for yourself where, like you say, if there's ever something that you're, I don't know, confused about, or you can't see the wood for the trees or whatever, then being able to contact someone and say, look, can you maybe talk this through with me? I am also, at the moment, I'm very big in like health and fitness as well, so often to kind of get out of my head, like, I'm very big on going for walks and listening to like inspiring podcasts. I'm a big fan of Stephen Bartlett. He's amazing. He has some amazing guests on, talking about the sort of manifestation side of things, I listen to a lot of that as well. So your likes of like your Wayne Dyer and Dr. Joe Dispenza, like they actually, Joe Dispenza, he talks about from an actual cognitive brain point of view, like rewiring your thoughts and that side of things. So I know it sounds a bit wacky, but it's been proven to actually work. So sometimes, because it can be very easy when you're, especially when you're working alone, to go into a bit of a downward spiral. And I've now noticed if I'm having a day, as I say, where I'm feeling off or whatever, I try to, because I'm now working at home. I did have a unit, but over COVID, I moved back home. So I literally remove myself from the situation, and I'll go and work in a coffee shop or something like that. And I also, again, go back to health and fitness. Like I'm very big into bodybuilding and things. So I did a bodybuilding competition last weekend, and then I got through to the finals, so that was great.
Well
so that
done.
was a good But it's just finding things that work for you.
Sure.
So a bit like when I was speaking about the definition of success, and again, this is where I feel like social media can be a bit of a highlight reel, or you've got like your Gary V like hustle culture, you know, like, and the whole you can sleep when you're dead, and it's like you'll be dead soon if you don't sleep. Like you need to. I've found myself thinking, you know, should I be pulling all-nighters? Should I be, you know, staying up till whenever? And I suppose that this also applies to the student context as well. Like, there'll be students who leave things like till the last minute to submit their essays and assignments and stuff. But you're just going to make yourself ill. But as I say, it's doing things that work for you and make you happy and make you feel like you're building your own definitions of success.
It's almost like finding, I mean, obviously your passion project front and centre is your business, but it's finding alternative passion projects, essentially things that you enjoy doing outside of that can kind of disconnect from
and
that
I think
a little bit.
Yeah, I think you need to have a well-rounded life actually to be successful.
Yeah.
Whatever your definition of that is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because actually if all you've got is your business or your studies or whatever it is, it's pretty one-dimensional. Yeah. And you've nothing else to like.
All your eggs in one basket as well.
Where's the release? Where's the
And that's just out, you know? I find that's a one-way route to sort of guaranteed burnout.
Totally.
I'll be honest, a couple of months ago I actually found myself resenting my business, and that it was because I hadn't had any proper time off. I was stressing myself out about so many things. Like I was burying my head in the sand about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I was a lot of things that I think if I'd just spoken to people, or like for example, like I had like I got a really big unexpected billing from HMRC, and when I eventually got through to them and actually spoke to someone, it was very manageable. But for a good couple of weeks, I just ignored it because, and that never helps anyone. That never.
I think HMRC are the worst 4 letters in the English language. I think even if you get an email where we're trying to help you with your tax return or whatever it is, you're just like, and you really though, you know, I think there is an element of anxiety that comes in there, but there is also, I think what you're saying there on, you know, like being proactive. Sometimes it's easy to get like paralysed by the fear of addressing it, but like actually taking even like doing one task a day and just being able to cross it off a list is progress. You know, and I think it is about breaking it down sometimes, because I think we've all kind of been there over the last wee while, and I think a lot of people are just still exhausted. Like I think, and you look at what's going on in the world right now, you're like, oh my gosh, like you know, I think we've run out of crises to talk about. Like, you know, cost of living, housing, mortgage, you know, climate. You know, it's like, what else can we be in crisis about? And I just think people are emotionally drained, and I think there's not been a moment to stop where like, the entire world could just go on holiday for 6 weeks or something like that, and just like everything would stop for a wee while, because I think it's just constant for people. And you talked about having a network and stuff like that, and I think that's the other thing that people have lost through COVID is like, you know, people have lost their networks, or they've lost connection to their networks. And I think try to re-establish that, and I think try to encourage students to develop that as well, because it's quite foreign. I think if you've come from high school where you know your pals, right, you've been with them for 5 or 6 years, and that's been challenging for young people in high school, then you come to uni, it's quite overwhelming. I think it's intimidating. We're sitting here in the student union space, which is pretty big. I think for a lot of students, when they walk in, they're like, where am I meant to go? What do I do? You know, but actually try to find networks that you can tap into. So whether it's societies, whether it's going along to hear speakers talk, or getting involved in some of the external stuff that's happening in Glasgow. You know, there's like great stuff happening within the City Innovation District. You know, you've got Eagle Labs, you've got all kinds of stuff kicking about as well. And I think sometimes it's just about having the bravery just to say, I'll go check it out. You know, you get a free glass of wine if nothing else.
You know, and it's very much about, it's that whole thing of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And again, that's something I push myself to do every day, like whether it's just a little thing. Because if you stay in your little bubble of like your friends and your family, so see if I only spoke to my mum about business things, like she would tell me, number one, that everything was amazing and like, I don't need to change anything, but number two, and everyone else was terrible and it was all their fault. And it's the same with your,
that's what mums do.
I know, it's just your friends and your family tend to just tell you what you want to hear rather than being able to help or whatever. So that's where having sort of external networks really important.
Definitely. I mean, you kind of touched upon this next question. We kind of talked a little bit about experience and burnout, but I do want to mention it because the person says that they follow you on social media. And it seems like you've got a wonderful wee setup, you and your mum, so a wee shout out to your mum. And you do create, you create the products, you package them, you send them out. It's all done between you and your mum. Does it ever feel quite stressful, just the two of you working what feels like, round the clock all the time? I'm guessing you've mentioned that you've experienced burnout. What are the things that you have done to kind of find that balance again?
Well, again, this is where it comes back to, like, when you're working with, especially your family, it can be quite a tense experience, and even more so, as I say, because I've moved our operations as such back home. So I've got a really, really big flat. So we've got like my office, and then I've converted a room into like the packaging and production area. Okay. We've got plenty of space, but even so, it can be a little bit. I have to grit my teeth sometimes. My mum just lets herself in the door in the morning, and I'm like, I'm not even ready. And I'm like, but it's I guess having a set routine, I would say, has been really pivotal for me. Like, where possible, I know I mentioned, it's great to have that flexibility, and I do definitely take advantage of that. So if I've maybe stayed up a bit later the night before or whatever, I tend to be a bit more flexible in my wake up times and whatever. But generally speaking, I'll try and plan out like my day the night before. And one of the things that I sort of struggle with, and I'm really working on, is being adaptable. So I can be quite blinkered in terms of, I'll plan my day out, I'll do all my block bookings and things, and I'll be like, right, I'm doing this, and see if something comes up that's I wasn't planning for and is not part of my schedule. I can be very easily like thrown off, which is when I was in the throes of what I think was, I don't know if it was definitely burnout, but I was very, very close to it.
It can be like that one thing that pushes you.
It can be very easy to be like, right, that's it. The day is a write-off. I'm just going to go and eat that bar of chocolate that's over there.
Binge Netflix,
Yeah, but it's and we're talking about like to-do lists and things. Like, I am also very guilty of, as I say, ramming my day through full of what I want to do, blah blah blah, and it can be quite disheartening and see if you don't get them done. So now I try to focus on a couple. And if I can get them done, and then everything else I can just if I can fit other things in, then brilliant, brilliant. But it's trying to make sure you have a structure. When I think back to when I was a student here, and you think about how many classes students have got to go to, how many essays, exams you've got to study for, various different things. I actually think students are actually amazing. Like, how did they manage to fit it all in? And I think, how did I do it? I need to go back to Melanie back then and be like, can you help me today?
It's a really good point. And, I think, again, just because we've got people listening who hopefully are students, that, we have lots of services here as well that can support them on that side too. So we've got a disability and wellbeing service that's got counsellors, that's got trained professionals there to help people when they do get into difficulty. And I think some of it is about actually putting your hand up when some of the warning signs start, rather than wait until you're in crisis, because you know that's really hard for anybody who ends up there. But definitely, like, you know, level 4 of the Mary Dunn wing, there's the whole disability and wellbeing team there who can support you. We've got an advice hub here in the student union that can support around welfare issues, housing, homelessness, because as you say, it could be one thing that puts you over the edge. You maybe can't pay your bills this month, but there are hardship funds there. There are ways out and support mechanisms across the university that are there, because everybody wants students to do well. Everyone wants people to thrive when they're here, but that's not always the case for everyone, right? And life happens and circumstances happen, but hopefully there's enough of a safety net that we can support people when they do get into a bit of trouble, and hopefully by the time they leave uni they can look back on that journey and go, oh, somebody was there to catch me. And I think it's the people who we don't know about, they're the ones that I worry about. They're the ones that keep me up at night sometimes, that are maybe out there and aren't asking for help and haven't got a group of friends around them and are a bit more isolated and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely think, you know, students are amazing, but also ask for help when you need it, because we all get into a bit of bother sometimes.
I know, and I think that's key, and I'm so glad that you've got like the facilities, like the counselling service and things, and I genuinely hope that people will use that and go, because there is absolutely nothing wrong with talking about how you're feeling or admitting that things are too much. Like, I wish I had admitted long before now that I was struggling, and because, as I say, it's very easy, and I don't know, there's the whole like comparison trap where it's very easy to compare yourself to people you see in social media, and everything looks so amazing and so. And I was actually, before we started recording this, I was talking to Ellie, and I was saying how I, you know, when we're talking about my mum, like on social media, I would say this is Aileen, rather than saying this is my mum, because I used to be like, oh, it's not very professional for me to talk about my mum and whatever. When in actual fact, like, it just shows that you are a human. You are, you're going to have up and down days. I know I love it if there's certain businesses and people that I follow, and see when you see that they're having a rubbish day as well, it's like, oh good, it's not just me. Like, there are other people. And I think maybe, I don't know if vulnerability is the right word.
I think it is, because when you're talking about that, I'm just thinking about Brene Brown.
The hesitation in even just saying that. It was like, oh, is that too?
Yeah.
You know, is that too much?
And I think it's a word that has probably got a lot of. It's a very loaded word, I think, and obviously we talk about vulnerable young people, vulnerable adults, and I think leading from a place of vulnerability and actually showing people you're vulnerable. Like, I don't know if any of you read Brene Brown or watch any of her stuff, right? Yeah. But the research proves that there's empirical data now that says, you know, the best leaders are the ones that are vulnerable, the ones that show that they're human. And actually, I think people respond to that. I think the strongest brands are actually the ones that can showcase that what goes on behind the scenes and what's happening. So yeah, I think it's good to show people that side of your character, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely just almost kind of linking back to what you've mentioned throughout this podcast is finding your values.
Yes.
And then going from there, rather than going, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to make money and I want to be my own boss. It's kind of going, I think it's Stephen Bartlett that actually mentioned something along these lines in one of his podcasts, where he kind of said, identify your values first. What do you actually want? You want flexibility, you want autonomy, it's almost like your workplace values.
Yeah.
And going, this is what I'm wanting. And if that's being an entrepreneur and finding your passion project and developing it and working that around your workplace values, then great. But if that's working for a company or you know, as a student, finding your tribe around those values, I think that's probably.
And you know, there's maybe something in that to even sit down and do some work with our students around, well, what are your values, what's your mission statement actually, because I think so often you get caught in the treadmill in the rat race, right? You come here, you've got to go to uni, you've got to get a job, you've got to do this. And actually, if you work towards what your values were and what your mission is, you hopefully end up with more purpose-driven people in society who are actually like, no, I actually want to do this. And that might not be a traditional route. That might be going and volunteering. I heard about a young person yesterday who's off to Africa to train to be a gamekeeper. And that's the most exciting story I've heard for ages, because so many young people will leave high school and think they have to get to uni or college. And I think they're like, no, I just need a bit of time. And I was like, what a wicked set of skills to have. Even if you decide to go to uni in a year's time, go, well, I went out and I've been a gamekeeper and I know how to work with animals and stuff like that. I would hire that person that came for a job interview, because they're going to separate themselves from everybody else.
Yeah.
But they've also gone and pursued a passion, and I think there's something to be said for that. So yeah, definitely, like the values based thing, I think is really interesting.
Because I'll be honest, I as I say, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I actually came to uni because I thought that's what I was meant to do. Like, I come from a family of, like, everyone's a teacher. So, of course, when I said that I was doing history, everyone's like, you're going to do history teaching? And I was like, I don't know. But then, everything happens for a reason. So, if I hadn't came to uni, I start to wonder, would I have broken out in psoriasis? Would I have then started making my own products? Like, because as I say, if you had asked me 10, 15 years ago, would I imagine myself like running my own business, being self-employed, so on and so forth? I would have been like, no. Like, I probably would have been working in an office somewhere and whatever. And no shade to anyone that does that, obviously, but now I can't imagine not doing this. And I honestly think I would be a nightmare employee now, because I'm too feisty and too like, I'll be like, what do you mean I can't sit at home at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning cuddling my cats before I start my work? So it's like, when it comes back to though, like your values and your purpose, I do think there is sometimes a bit of pressure around that as well, because I've found myself being like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? But I now think my definition of a bit like success is whatever it makes you happy when you're doing it. Like,
totally.
And you know, like, time will fly when you're doing it. You'll not think about. You'll feel really content, and that's what's most important to me. So.
Well, there's two more questions. You kind of mentioned one already around working with families. We'll bypass that. But so obviously Strathclyde Inspire, we mentioned, offers kind of events and activities that allow for that cross-functional working and being able to, you know, meet other entrepreneurs and meet potential mentors and things like that. So I would imagine that makes it feel less alone, a bit more comfortable, like you said. But do you think that there's anything else that either universities or student unions or maybe external organisations that you've worked with the business could do more around supporting the mental health and well-being of an entrepreneur?
I guess even so, a podcast like this and this kind of episode is an amazing start because it's bringing awareness to it, and I guess that is the key word, is awareness, and the word kind of vulnerability. So even just talking about it more, like, and so it's very easy to, let's say for example, if you're in like a business management class or you're talking about entrepreneurship and so on, it's very easy to talk about the overall functionality of a business, all the practical things, like, you know, you need to do this and you need to set up a Facebook group, and I'm totally butchering what might be taught in a business management class, but I don't know. But I feel like there is a big gap, or there is a big part missing, which is about the mental health aspects. And I guess, I suppose, also like almost like the psychology side of it as well, like how you can manage or potentially things that you could work on yourself, like even talking about things like journaling, like questions that you could ask yourself on a daily basis, you know, like how are you feeling today, and so on. Because just as a little side note, again, talking about things I feel like I should be doing, you know how there's the whole like miracle morning or the morning routine.
The morning routine, morning pages.
Morning pages. I
I
tried to do, so I read, who is it that wrote the book? Is it the Miracle Morning book? And it's all about how you should, there's certain steps you follow, and you should be exercising and journaling and meditating and all this. And getting up at like 3:25 to watch the sun coming up and all that. I tried that, but it actually made me more stressed than actually helping me. So now I sort of look at it as a holistic thing. So my number one priority is always making my coffee first thing in the morning, right? But so when I've made my coffee, if I fancy, sometimes I will journal or write pages and pages and pages. Sometimes I'll just write a couple of, like, you know, things I'm grateful for. Sometimes I might like write out my day if I haven't done it already. But to go back to your question, Ellie, I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent again, but I think it is just what I would like to see is more people talking about it and reassuring. So if I was Melanie, you know, coming into uni all those years ago and going in, whether it's coming into like the Inspire Hub or whatever, just knowing that number one, there's people there that I could talk to if I wanted, but also, you know, whether it's doing like a seminar or a webinar or something on the mindset side of things would be really good.
It's good advice, good feedback as well, because I definitely think the more proactive we can be and give people tools to help manage. They might not use them right now, but hopefully at some point in life they go, oh, that's quite helpful. I might do that. I might use that. And I definitely think more awareness raising around some of this stuff would be beneficial.
Definitely. Yeah. And finally, there is one last question. What's your one piece of advice for anybody listening today that perhaps has an idea for a business, but they just lack the confidence to just go for it? What would you say to them?
Well, that's the key phrase, go for it. And so, right, you can't see because I'm quite tattooed, right? I've quite a lot of tattoos, and my next one, well, I'm planning on getting a couple more, and one of them is a Wayne Dyer quote, and it said, everything that now exists was once imagined. And also, the second one is, I swear words beginning with F, fear. Because I just think fear, you know, people talk about all the different emotions and things, and fear is the biggest one that stops people. Yeah. So you just, everything you want is on the other side of fear. So just, nothing's going to happen if you try something. At least you've tried. And if it fails, then I don't think there is such a thing as failure. It's all lessons. Yeah. So
I think it's interesting because when somebody says the word failure, they think, oh, that's a bad thing. But I don't necessarily think that, like you're saying, maybe it's not the word failure that we should be using. It's entrepreneurs try.
Yeah. I think it's learning. It's prototyping. Learning, For me, it's all about prototyping. It's about designing how you want to design your life or design your business. It's like, of course, you've got to try things out and then go, oh, that didn't work. We'll try it a different way, or we'll try something else. So it's about prototyping. I think it's the framing, the language, even words like feedback. I think we always think feedback's a bad thing. Feedback can only be a good thing, surely. Somebody's trying to tell you how to make your product better, how to make yourself better, how to, you know, if you get coached, you don't become the number one tennis player in the world by going, oh, I don't want your feedback. You've got to take it on, right? And I think we look at excellence in other parts of life and society, the best people are the folk that are really good at receiving feedback.
Yeah, they're willing to work on themselves.
The best products, the best companies are the ones that, you know, go, all right, we haven't got it right with that factory, right? We're going to go away, sort it out, and then we're going to become the market leaders in how to, you know, manufacture clothes abroad or whatever it's going to be, right? So you might screw up. That's all right.
Yeah. Well, my favourite example I read recently, and this is a very sort of broad explanation of it, but it's imagine you're in the park, right, and you're playing, like, throwing a ball with someone, and if they chuck the ball at you, and me being me, I'm very clumsy, if you drop the ball, you wouldn't just go, right, that's it, we are not doing this anymore, I'm leaving. You just pick the ball up and you chuck it back, and then you chuck it back and forth, and you keep going, and you learn, and eventually you will, if you did it enough, like with repetition and learning, it becomes like second nature to you. And or the other example is like a baby that's learning to walk. Like, think how many thousands of times they fall down and they don't even think about it, they get up and they just keep going. Totally. So we have to, it kind of makes me sad that as you get older, like, adults seem to get rid of all that, and they become so focused on
create more time for play.
I know.
No, we do though. I think so. Like, you know, imagine I was like that right now. We went out there, and there's people probably can't see, but there's loads of students sitting about there. Imagine like that, right? You're it. We're playing a massive game of tag, right? And folk would be like, "What are you on about?" But I would be bang up for a massive game of tag. Imagine running around this campus with so much, or hide and seek.
Hide and seek.
Oh, you never find it.
That'd be amazing.
Graham House building. Nobody will find you.
You make friends that way. That's how you do it in the playback. So why would you not do it? Yeah.
But you know, such a big focus of work and working life, and I think the stresses, if you look at working life the last 20 years, is so focused on productivity at a time when the country's actually got less productivity. But folk are like presenteeism, sit at your desk, you know, churn stuff out. But there's no time for fun.
No,
and just having a laugh and just like actually getting a day out with your staff, playing rounders, that kind of thing. Where folk are like, I haven't done that since I was at school. But we did it recently on a thing that we did, and it was we were just literally we were on the floor laughing because it was so funny, just like hanging about, and you forget that, and actually, life would be very dull, I think, if we didn't do a bit more play. So there might be something in that as well for all entrepreneurs and anyone who's out there. Just like have a bit of fun.
Yeah, you need to remember that.
That's a brilliant takeaway for sure.
Well, Melanie, thank you so much for taking
Thank
the time
you.
to speak to us today. And it hasn't even been too tangential. I think everything's come back to
Good, thank
core
goodness.
about, I think we've talked about vulnerability, we've talked about purpose and vision, we've talked about, the things, some of the tools that you use, I guess, around your own mental health and well-being. We didn't talk about the cats very much, which we probably could have talked more about the cats.
Oh, I know, my boys.
Animal therapy, there's something there.
There is. I've got 2 ragdolls, and sometimes just getting to, get a cuddle with them at the end of a night.
Yeah.
It's just, there's something in that.
Well, I don't know about yours, but mine always tell me when it's time to take a break by coming and sitting smack bang on my laptop. So I'm like, okay.
And on that cheery note, that's all for this edition of Exploring Entrepreneurship. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed listening. To find out more about Strathclyde Inspire and Exploring Entrepreneurship series, remember to hit the subscribe or follow button on the Strathclyde Inspire podcast channel, and be sure to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter. Just search Strathclyde Inspire. Thanks again. Cheers.